I think rivalries this year in college football could be as collectively explosive as they've been in a long time. So I want you to think about what happened with Texas and Texas A&M earlier this week in baseball, where the head coach goes from A&M and losing a national championship to being the head coach at Texas 12 hours later. I was outspoken about it. I am not a fan of it at all. Not about that in particular. I just don't like coaches going from rival to rival. I don't even like players transferring from rival to rival. I don't think it should be illegal. I don't think it should have to be illegal. I think it should just be understood. But I digress. So that happened. Texas and Texas A&M are in the same conference again. And I really think people are overlooking how insane this rivalry game is about to be because we have not had it since 2011. And so I've got a lot of folks who watch this show that really aren't old enough to really remember much about Texas and Texas A&M. That's the thing about these conference realignments. You end up going what feels like not a long time, and then all of a sudden a generation has gone by, and we define that as 10 years in college athletics, and you've got an entire generation of young people who look and say, Texas and Texas A&M, they're in the same state. I guess it makes sense that they used to play. Yeah, they used to play. But it may be that the most fiercest version of that rivalry is still in the future. So they only met 2 times in the 2000s as ranked versus ranked. So it wasn't always a game with national championship implications on the line. It's just hatred because it's in-state stuff, and there's the whole big brother, little brother thing from the past, which I think is garbage moving forward. But in the past, it was very real. So I'm going to get back to that in a second. In fact, let me put a little star up here because I'll forget. That game this year is in Kyle Field. I want you to remember 2 years ago when Texas went to Arkansas. Arkansas had their own little bottled up history with Texas, and they unloaded. Those folks up there in Fayetteville unloaded on Texas. Texas had no shot. It's like someone hit a hornet's nest with a baseball bat 5 times and then said, hey, come out here for a second. Texas had no clue what they were walking into. I have no idea how you don't expect Kyle Field to be the same way this year. And then also you bake in the idea that you don't have to take a back seat to Texas anymore. You did in the Big 12. You did in the Southwest Conference. There was a baked-in disadvantage for you, whether anyone in Austin wants to admit that or not. You don't have that anymore. The only thing that can get in your way is yourself now. In other words, if Texas continues to dominate you, it's because you let it happen. You don't take a backseat politically to them in the SEC because that's not the way it's going to fly in the SEC. Texas may dominate you because they're just better. Texas may continue to soar above you because they operate at a higher capacity, but it's not because any kind of intrinsic mechanisms in the SEC are keeping you down. It's just going to be because A&M keeps itself down. So if you toss the sandbags out of the balloon, you can fly just as high as they can. Those folks realize that. For the first time, they realize, hey, our destiny kind of really is in our hands. Atmosphere will be out of this world insane. So that dynamic's going on in that rivalry. Michigan-Ohio State has gone the way it's gone the past 3 years, and it's totally inverted the way people think about what, to that point, was a rivalry dominated by Ohio State. Just utterly dominated by it. You had started to take for granted that, yeah, it's a rivalry in name only, but we all know the way that one's going to go. Well, then all of a sudden, boom, 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 3 years in a row, capped off by a national championship win with Michigan, and then we get to 2024. And what do we have? We got folks like me, and I'm not apologizing for this, saying I think this will be the best team Ryan Day's had. I think it's the most talented roster that Ryan Day's had. Michigan, it is reasonable to expect them to take a step back. The odds makers agree. They've got to go to Columbus. Everything shapes up for Ohio State to be solidly favored in and win that game. But here's the thing. They've been favored multiple times in this little stretch that Michigan's had, this little run they've been on, and they've been over. So it doesn't matter what the numbers say. It doesn't matter what FanDuel says. And it doesn't matter which venue this game's played in. I was up there 2 years ago. I was up there when not only did Ohio State get Michigan in their own building, not only was Ohio State solidly favored, not only do you have C.J. Stroud at quarterback, but I remember during the week it looked like the weather was going to be bad. And then come Saturday, gorgeous skies, temperatures in the upper 40s. It felt like everything aligned. And then they just got after you again. So if we get to this November and that rivalry game sets up to where everything feels like it's lining up for Ohio State, Saturday still comes. The sun still rises. And 11:58, 11:59, boom. The stroke of noon still comes, and you still got to play the game. And can you imagine if that thing's 13-7 Michigan at the half? I'm just saying, it doesn't, all the other trappings, all the other talking, it doesn't matter as long as you got to get them for 60 and they get you for 60. That rivalry, I don't think's ever felt in my lifetime like it feels right now. And then not to be outdone, down in Alabama, you've got Auburn and Alabama. Hat tip to Auburn, they hung in many years with Bama at the apex of the best run Bama ever went on. They beat them a number of times. Auburn won a national championship in the time Nick Saban was at Alabama and played for another one. So it's not like they got steamrolled constantly. However, everybody in the SEC took a back seat. Imagine being in the same state as Nick Saban. Well, every Christmas, every family reunion forever, for the past decade and a half down there, they've gathered and they've said, man, once Saban gets out of here, like, we'll hit the reset button. So they went and got Hugh Freeze last year, and that was their choice of hire. And then Nick Saban retires right afterwards, and all of a sudden there was rejoicing down on the plains. And not only do we have a guy who can recruit, but their assassin recruiter is retiring, and they hired a guy from, being told, the Pacific Northwest, who's never even lived down here. He's never recruited down here. This is our shot. And then Kalen DeBoer comes in, and the early returns are he's out recruiting you, or at least recruiting on par with you. We don't know how the rest of the cycle is going to shake out. But that dynamic's really, really in a state of flux right now, because there was a window there where every Auburn person I know, and I grew up around a ton of them, they were really boisterous and just sort of accepting and daring you not to accept the idea that time's passed for Alabama. I mean, this new guy coming in now, he's a good coach, but he doesn't know the way it works down here. And maybe that'll still be true. The early returns are that's not true. And so the dynamic there is Auburn about to re-grab that rivalry by the throat like they had? They had that thing in a chokehold before Saban got there. Or is Kalen DeBoer going to kind of grab the rope right as it looked like it was about to fall and then pull that thing right back with max tension on it, and you get no let up? That's why we play the games. Rivalries are such a beautiful thing in college football.